J'ouvre maintenant.
I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 47 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, February 3rd, 2022, the committee is meeting to discuss the Air Passenger Protection Regulation. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. Pursuant to the House Order of Thursday, June 23rd, 2022, members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application.
Members, that all witnesses have been sound tested for the benefit of our translators and have passed the test. With us today for the first half of our meeting, we have appearing before us the Honourable Omar Alghabra, Minister of Transport, Department officials, Dominic Rochon, Acting Deputy Minister, Craig Hutton, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister, Policy, and Nicholas Robinson, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister, Safety and Security. Minister, thank you for appearing, and if I may, thank you as always for accepting this committee's invitation to appear before us. With that, and to get things started, I'll turn it over to you for your 5-minute open remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you and the honourable member on this important issue. Merci de m'avoir invité.
Thanks for having invited me.
Representatives from Transport Canada, Dominic Rochon, Acting Deputy Minister, Nicholas Robinson, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister, Safety and Security, Craig Hutton, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister, Policy, and Colin Stacey, Director General, Air Policy. I want to thank the Liberal members of this committee who have called for this emergency meeting. Canadians deserve answers about what happened during this Christmas travel season, and I welcome the chance to provide information and answer your questions. Canadians understand that bad weather may disrupt air travel. However, they expect and deserve to be kept informed about alternative plans and be compensated when their rights are violated. Unfortunately, the circumstances many travelers faced this holiday season were completely unacceptable. C'est inacceptable.
It is unacceptable.
Concerned and frustrated to hear about those who were stranded, delayed, or missed their holiday plans due to horrible travel conditions. The safety and efficiency of Canada's aviation sector is a priority of mine. Upholding the rights of passengers is also a priority of mine. And supporting a competitive and resilient sector is a priority of mine. During the acute phase of COVID, the sector faced very difficult conditions. Our government was there to support the sector and protect its jobs. And as we are recovering from that acute phase, we saw a challenging period when the entire system showed some weakness in coping with the surging demand. We worked closely with the sector to respond to those challenges and made quick adjustments to address bottlenecks. Last fall, I brought together industry leaders, including airlines, airports, and unions. I stressed the importance of avoiding what we saw during the summer and discussed steps on how to further strengthen our sector. For the most part, we've made progress. Nous avons fait des progrès.
We have made progress.
Throughout the holidays, we didn't see the long queues that we saw last summer at CATSA and CBSA screening lines. We took action to ensure passengers weren't delayed. But we still have more to do. Of course we do. In terms of the Air Passenger Protection Regulation, we were the first government in Canadian history to put this in place in 2019, just a few months before the pandemic started. On a été la première gouvernement.
We were the first government to introduce regulations on air passenger rights.
The pandemic exposed weaknesses in the Bill of Rights. That is why, last September, we reinforced the regulation by requiring that travelers be entitled to reimbursement for situations beyond the control of the airlines. Are there further opportunities to improve the rules? Yes. This is why, long before the events of the holiday season, we were working to strengthen passenger rights. On travaille.
We are working on improvements to the Bill of Rights of air passengers.
Should be shifted from the passenger to the airlines. Currently, passengers are told by the airlines too often that they are not entitled to compensation when they really are. This situation has generated an avalanche of complaints to the Canadian Transportation Agency since last summer. We will, of course, continue to put the necessary resources into the CTA so that it can fulfill its mandate. But we will also make other changes to the regulations to improve its efficiency. I hope to be able to announce changes and introduce legislation in the coming months. As far as Via Rail is concerned, several elements came together to explain what happened. A CN derailment, snowstorms, and highway closures. I can't even imagine the stress and fear that people must have felt being stuck for hours on the trains with little communication. There are no words strong enough to express how frustrated I was about the situation. I spoke to Via Rail directly, and we will continue to have a discussion on this. J'ai parlé à la...
I spoke to Via Rail administration, and we will continue to have a discussion on this.
Protocols clearly need to be reviewed, and a full examination of what happened is taking place. We will take action accordingly. In conclusion, I want to tell you that our government is not hiding. We are going to assume our responsibilities, and the industry must assume theirs. Nous allons continuer d'être...
We will continue to work together so that this never happens again.
I would like to use this opportunity to thank all the employees in the Canadian transportation sector who worked hard over the holiday period to ensure Canadians could make their way home or visit their friends and family. Mr. Chair, that concludes my opening remarks. Happy to answer any questions that you or my colleagues may have. Je suis heureux.
And be happy to answer your questions.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you very much, Minister.
We will begin our line of questioning today with Ms. Landsman. Ms. Landsman, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Minister, thanks for accepting the invitation. We've heard a lot of testimony throughout the day and we've seen and heard firsthand stories of canceled Christmas, endless delays, sleeping on airport floors, being shuffled from hotel lobby to hotel lobby in a foreign country. Your government has been in power for 7 years, and you have been Minister of Transport since the beginning of 2021. You oversaw the chaos this summer leading to Canadian airports being ranked the worst in the world, both number 1 and number 2 spots. And on November 17th, you blamed airport staff shortages as the reason for the chaos during the summer and claimed to have solved the problem. You had a summit, but as we heard from witnesses today, provided no policy directives as per the airline's testimony. And worse, passenger protections put in place by the government have failed to actually protect passengers, consumers, and anyone in this country who was stuck elsewhere or stuck on a tarmac for well over 12 hours in some cases. And a Canadian that flies British Airways to the UK is better protected than one who flies WestJet to the UK. And that remains a fact under these passenger protections. So, Minister, you yourself are responsible and have the tools to fix it. The question is why you waited so long, why you waited from the first time you heard about Sunwing, presumably when the rest of the country did on December 19th, why you waited till January 5th, and why you haven't spoken to the airports, as we heard, while Canadians were stranded again on tarmacs for 12 hours, in some cases in Vancouver. So I have a few questions. The Canada Transportation Acts permits Cabinet, on your recommendation, orders to stabilize the national transportation system in an event of extraordinary disruption. Now, we all agree that the Sunwing situation was an extraordinary disruption, and you didn't recommend to Cabinet to make an order under Section 47 in connection with Sunwing. So I ask, why not? And what was more important? What had you preoccupied?
And I want to welcome back Ms. Landsman to this committee. There were so many in her remarks that deserves to be unpacked, and I understand the political interest in conflating what happened last summer with what happened this Christmas, which I think Canadians understand that they are two separate situations. Having said that, our government and I personally have been very proactive since the summer. She talked about the summit that I held, which was not the only thing that was done from the summer till now. She talked about communications with Sunwing. I can assure her and all of my colleagues that my office, first of all, I have been briefed regularly and daily, in fact, sometimes hourly, on what's happening. My officials, my office has been in touch with Sunwing daily, sometimes more than once a day, to ensure that we get updated, to ensure that we remind Sunwing of their obligations towards their customers and to Canadians. And Mr. Chair, we've been working, when I was here just December 5th, just over a month ago, committee members were asking me what lessons have we learned from the summer, and I was glad to share about our work plan. And I did talk about the plan to improve our passenger Bill of Rights. I talked about the plan to modernize security screening. I talked about our plan to improve the authorities that airports have, and I talked about improving the authorities and the tools that the Canadian Transportation Agency needs. This is ongoing work. This is extremely serious. We've been proactive. And I wish when the Conservatives were in power, had implemented a passenger Bill of Rights, because today we would have been in a much better position, improving and enhancing the rules. We are where we are. As I said in my opening remarks, and our government accept our responsibility, and we are working to ensure that lessons learned will be benefited from, our passengers' rights are protected, but it's important to remind Canadians that we do have rights for passengers. In fact, Sunwing violated those rights. So the issue is not only that we didn't have rules. The issue is that some private operators also did not uphold their obligation.
Minister, I appreciate the answer, and I think we should have equal time to ask and answer. Since you didn't use the section that would allow for orders to stabilize the network, there's another section in the Act, it's number 49, that gives you the power to direct the Canadian Transport Agency, that's the agency that we'll hear from, that's 33,000 claims backlog, that is responsible for some of these passenger protections to which passengers weren't protected in this country, to conduct an inquiry into any matter related to the federal network. So a few more questions. Did you direct the CTA to conduct an inquiry into Sunwing, the flight delays, the cancellations, the tarmac delays, and if not, why not?
Mr. Chair, and to Ms. Landsman, the way we set up in our system, the CTA is an arm's length quasi-judicial body that is delegated or empowered to uphold and enforce the rules. The reason why we set it up that way is to avoid the appearance of political interference in investigation, in fining, in holding parties responsible accountable. That idea has served Canadians well to ensure that there is independence and there is non-political interference. Having said all of that, I have been working with the chair of the CTA, with the Canadian Transportation Agency, since my appointment as a minister, but particularly since the summer. I made it clear that I expect the rules to be upheld, that I expect that the CTA identifies ways to improve the efficiency of managing their backlog. And I also am committed to working with the CTA to provide them with the resources that they need and to help improve the efficiency of processing their complaints.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you very much, Ms. Landsman. Next, we have Mr. Sorbera. Mr. Sorbera, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Minister. Minister, as we know, Canadians during certain parts of the year need to travel, want to travel, visit their family, go on a vacation. We live in a geographically big country, so aviation is a main principle or mode of transportation. We also know we've come out of 2 years from the pandemic, and the air sector was probably the worst hit sector, aviation sector, not only here in Canada but around the globe. And it's gotten back up to its feet and incrementally moving forward. Some bumps along the way that we see here, as well as also we see in the United States, what happened with Southwest Airlines last week. But our government, prior to COVID, was acting, including the Air Passenger Bill of Rights, introducing air passenger protections. Unlike the prior government, which had been in power for 11 years and did not take any action to protect consumers at all and left it in the hands of private corporations. So very much so an applaud there. My first question, Minister, to you is with regards to the proposed or potential changes that may come in strengthening the air passenger protections that are in place. Will there be opportunities for Canadians to weigh in on those proposed changes?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Mr. Subera, for being here and for your questions. Let me just say, first echo what you said. You're right. We saw not only in Canada, but across the world, some challenges with the recovery from the acute phase of COVID in the aviation sector. We saw disruptions around the world, in the United States, in Europe, and certainly in Canada. But we've taken action, we've taken steps to ensure that we've learned from those lessons, and we provided as a government the support that is needed, including enhancing of the Bill of Rights for passengers. To answer directly your question, right now I am currently consulting internally within Transport Canada, externally with our partners, and I'm also hoping, I know this committee had held hearings about the Passenger Bill of Rights in November, and I'm sure they're going to come up with recommendations based on this study. So I will be welcoming the recommendations of the committee. And once we have a draft proposal, we are going to table it in the House of Commons where Canadians and other stakeholders will be able to offer input. I am regularly receiving input from Canadians, and that is being taken into account in the drafting of the proposals.
Thank you, Minister. This morning, we did hear a mea culpa. We did hear an apology from Sunwing in terms of its actions, or I would say lack of action, during the Christmas period, and it was great to see. And I think further strengthening in the Air Passenger Bill of Rights is the right path. Minister, as we know, the travel system here in Canada is private. The entities that operate, for the most part, are private entities, such as the airlines. But there are federal agencies that play very significant and critical roles, such as CATSA and CBSA. From your angle and from the data that we've seen, how do these organizations perform over a peak season, i.e. the Christmas travel season?
Mr. Chair and Mr. Subera, I think it's really important to highlight this point because there are some people who are trying to conflate what happened in the summer with what happened this Christmas. We learned a lot from what happened in the summer. And I'm grateful to everyone who works in the industry who benefited from that unfortunate period. What we saw in the summer, almost every element of the aviation sector showed some weaknesses and challenges, including CATSA, including CBSA. There was no evidence this time around, because of the Christmas weather disruptions, that any of those government agencies had any failures. And in fact, let me give you an example. CATSA had a great plan to address the extreme weather. They actually reserved hotel rooms for their employees near the airport because they knew that if they went back home, they might be stuck on the road and may not be able to come back. That's an example of a tremendous visionary leadership by CATSA to ensure that they had the resources necessary, and we didn't see any evidence of long lineups at CATSA or CBSA.
You actually have a minute left, Mr. Subera.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, with regards to the air passenger protections that are currently in place and the Canadians know about and be informed, in terms of how that legislation has been enacted and how it is operating, the September changes that you put in place. First, can you describe those changes and how they've strengthened the system to date?
Sure. So it's important to first remind Canadians that the first version of the bill came into force a few months before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit, and we realized that the airlines were not obligated to refund passengers for cancellations outside of the airline's control. So we made changes to require airlines to refund passengers if a flight was canceled, even the ones that were outside of the control of the airline, that even included bad weather or pandemic.
And this was very important because during the pandemic, individuals had to wait more than 30 days. Now the requirement is, if I understand that correctly, that if there's a cancellation, even if it's not like a force majeure event, the responsibility of the airlines, that the refund has to happen within 30 days back to the consumer.
That is correct. So passengers are not on the hook for a canceled flight, even if it was weather or a pandemic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ware. Thank you very much, Minister. Prochainement, nous avons...
Next up, we have Madam Mignola. You have the floor. You have 6 minutes. Thank you. Minister, thanks for being with us. Gentlemen, thank you too. The last time you came before this committee, we were talking about what happened over the summer, which has nothing to do with the storms we had in December. That much we agree upon. You are once again before this committee. At your level of intervention, what explains the fact that the mess continues? These are two different incidents, but there is still a mess. So is there anything that should be reinforced in the regulation to protect air passengers, to give it more teeth? Is that one of the potential solutions?
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Mignola, for the question.
Let me just repeat. First of all, thank you for repeating the fact that they were two different situations. And Canadians are used to the fact we live in Canada, that we occasionally have extreme weather events that disrupt their travel plans. And Canadians are patient when it comes to these things. What is unacceptable to them and to me is when they're kept in the dark about what alternative plans are they provided or left stranded for days on end without any information. That was unacceptable. And it was today acknowledged by Sunwing that they made a mistake. Having said that, I will answer your questions. Yes, there are opportunities to strengthen the passenger Bill of Rights. I said this in my committee appearance on December 5th, and I will repeat it again, and I will assure you that I am and the department is currently working on these rules.
Dans les suggestions.
Among the suggestions when it comes to sanctions or improvements to the regulation, we're talking about maximal sanctions for the sanctions that exist at the moment go from $5,000 to $25,000. In the U.S., it's a maximum of $400,000. Are you considering Canadian sanctions to go up to really dissuade the companies to even envisage not to conform with the regulation, or do you think the amounts that we have are dissuasive enough?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we are looking at the issue of fines. If there's an opportunity to increase the fines or to enhance the rules, I welcome this committee's suggestion. And let me assure you that if you compare our overall regime to the U.S. regime, any independent observer will tell you that the Canadian system is stronger. That doesn't mean that we can't learn from the U.S. and the European model. And we're looking at different aspects, and I welcome the committee's suggestions on how else we can make them stronger.
Merci.
Thank you. Security issues cannot be brought up to refuse compensation in Europe, even if it's something that's outside the control of the airlines. They should still provide some kind of compensation. Once again, are you considering to modify the regulation to better protect air passengers and that the regulation gets closer to what's in place currently in Europe?
We are looking at, as I said, almost every aspect of the regulation to how we can further enhance it and strengthen it. And let me just be very clear, by the way. You're right. There are occasions, I've heard of occasions where the airlines is using the justification of safety to cancel flight, to avoid compensating passengers, and there has been a judgment by the Canadian Transportation Agency recently, just this I think summer or fall, that airlines cannot use labor shortage as a justification for safety, and therefore that airlines are responsible for those cancellations, even though they may have used the justification of safety.
Merci.
Thank you. So it is a reality then that there is some weakness that can be strengthened. So once again, focusing on potential solutions, you have noticed that I'm trying to concentrate on potential solutions. There are passengers' rights advocacy groups who have contacted us, and they're saying, look, this does not make any sense because the victims of the situation, the passengers, they are held responsible for proving their case before the airline companies to get compensation. So in your studies, in your efforts, are you considering to make changes so that the burden of proof is not on the shoulders of the passengers, but on the airlines?
Again, I want to thank you for focusing on constructive solutions. And my answer, in fact, I mentioned it in my opening remarks, we are looking at ensuring that more of the burden is on the airline, not on the passenger. The truth of the matter is the burden has always been on the airline. However, it's clear that there's further room to improve and clarify these rules. So that is precisely what we're looking at.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Vignola.
Thank you very much, Madam Vignola.
We have Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Bachrach, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for accepting our invitation to be here today. We're all here because Canadians are frustrated. They're angry, they're dismayed, and they feel betrayed. Both in the travel period of last summer and in the most recent holiday travel period, we saw the big airlines walk all over any semblance of passenger rights in this country. We now have a backlog of 33,000 complaints before the CTA, and that's just the tip of the iceberg because we know that only a small fraction of passengers manage to jump through all the hoops that you've created for them and get to the complaint process. Now, the big airlines are acting this way because they can get away with it, because you let them. And my first question for you is, why have you not stood up to the airlines on behalf of air passengers?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Bachrach, I appreciate your question, and I am here also equally because I know Canadians are frustrated, and I am frustrated, and I believe that this committee here is able to provide information and answers for Canadians and keep the pressure on the sector, including on government, to make sure that we do everything we can to protect passengers' rights. Let's be clear. The responsibility is of the airlines to uphold passengers' rights. Airlines, when they violate the rules, they need to be held accountable for that. They need to compensate their passengers. They need to compensate their customers for what they paid them to do. And we need to avoid, in fact, going to the CTA for passengers to receive the compensation they deserve. We set up a framework that never existed in Canada's history before 2019 because we saw the vacuum that existed. 2019 rules came into in force before the pandemic. The pandemic exposed certain area weaknesses. We strengthened them, and now we are looking at additional ways to strengthen the rules. So let's be clear. The airlines should or must continue to uphold passengers' rights, and when they violate them, they need to compensate their customers.
Well, Minister, I would argue that it's also the government's responsibility to uphold passenger rights. And unfortunately, the air passenger protection regime that you've created has massive loopholes in it. You could fly a 747 through these things, and we see airlines clearly exploiting those loopholes in order to avoid paying passengers the compensation that they're due. So it is positive to hear that you're once again going to go into the protection regulations and make some changes. My question is whether you'll commit to this committee that when those changes are done, Canada's legislation and regulations will be up to the standards set by the European Union and considered the gold standard for air passenger protection around the world.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Bacharach, I know this committee held hearings in November on the Passenger Bill of Rights. And now you know you've had expert witnesses tell you that the regime is quite strong. I know you've had experts tell you that it was stronger, much stronger than the U.S. regime. I know there were differences between our system and the European system. And we're looking, and we have been looking, and we'll continue to look at other jurisdictions around the world. So I commit to you that we are learning from the lessons of the last year, and that we are committed to clarifying, strengthening, and simplifying rules. So that is my commitment to you and to Canadians. But let there be no confusion. It is our government who understood that there is a vacuum there, that we brought in the Bill of Rights, that we studied and implemented rights that are way stronger than exist in our neighbors to the south. And any responsible government would learn and look for more opportunities to strengthen these rules, and that's precisely what we're doing.
You said earlier that you haven't directed the CTA because of its arm's length quasi-judicial nature, and yet the Canada Transportation Act specifically sets out in Section 43 the power for you to provide policy direction to the CTA. Why have you never used that tool despite all the challenges that we've seen in this country?
Actually, that's not true, Mr. Bacharach. I have directed the CTA on several policy items. The question is directing them on an investigation. But on a policy perspective, I'll tell you, I'll have in my mind the recent example. I've sent a directive to the CTA about accessibility, about making sure that airlines and the sector has strong rules to accommodate their customers who have accessibility issues. So I have utilized that tool on bilingualism. We will continue to use, but the question was on specific investigation, which is different than
no,
policy.
It wasn't on a specific investigation. It was on the topic of air passenger rights. For instance, the fact that the CTA has utterly failed to penalize the airlines at monetary amounts that are meaningful. The only fines we've seen total a little over $100,000. In the United States, the government has fined the big airlines over $7 million since the beginning of the pandemic. Why does this government treat the airlines with kid gloves, and why haven't you provided direction to the CTA to strengthen enforcement so that the airlines stop trampling on air passenger rights?
Mr. Bacharach, I appreciate your passion on this, and I share it. You had airlines today and on previous occasions tell you how this government is not treating them with kids' gloves. We are not treating airlines with kids' gloves. In fact, we're looking to, as I said, further strengthen the rules to ensure that passengers are protected. So let's be very clear. We have provided the CTA with the regulatory framework to uphold the law, to fine airlines who have been found in violation. And are there opportunities to strengthen these rules? I'm saying yes, and we're working on them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bacharach, and thank you, Minister. Next, we have Mr. Strahl. Mr. Strahl, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's certainly interesting to see Liberal members here at the committee doing victory laps after we've just experienced such a catastrophic travel season. And Minister, far from the opposition or the media conflating the summer and winter travel seasons, it was yourself, it was you, when you brought together industry players in November who declared that you were confident that Canadians could have confidence that there would not be the same issues plaguing the system that we saw in the summer, that the travel chaos had been managed because you held a summit. We've learned from both the airports and the airlines this morning that, in fact, you gave no policy direction at that summit. It appears to have been simply a public relations exercise so that you could say that you were doing something. You indicated that the government should do everything in their power to protect passengers. But we learned today, we asked the question, we asked Vancouver International Airport, the Vancouver Airport Authority, Did the minister call you? Has the minister called you since the middle of December? No. We asked the Montreal Airport Authority, did the minister call you since the middle of December? The answer was no. We asked the Toronto Airport Authority, did the minister call you since the middle of December? The answer was no. And most shockingly, the airlines also indicated that, especially Sunwing, said that they had not heard from you directly until January the 5th, which was more than 2 weeks after the catastrophic failure of that airline and people sleeping in hotel lobbies in a foreign country. So you waited until the passengers had been returned to Canada. You waited until the crisis had passed before you even did the basic thing to pick up the phone and contact the entities that had failed Canadians. So accountability starts at the top. And I would argue that you are passing the buck. You have not engaged with the industry directly. You might have left it to your officials. But between Christmas and New Year's, we needed to see action from you. And we didn't see it. We saw in the United States, we saw the U.S. Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, he picked up the phone. He had Southwest Airlines hauled onto the carpet within 24 hours of their failure. And you were nowhere for over 2 weeks. So given that, why did it take you until January the 5th to do your job, to talk to Sunwing Airlines, to demand answers for Canadian travelers?
Mr. Chair and Mr. Strahl, first of all, thank you for highlighting the work that was done during the summer by continuously bringing the airlines and other players in the sector to ensure that we're on the same page and that they understood the government's expectations of them. And in fact, at that summit that was held in November, it was made very clear to participants that we want to do everything in our power to avoid what we saw in the summer. And to a large degree, much of that had been avoided. Again, I won't deny that the extreme weather events have caused significant disruptions, and combined with the rush of the Christmas holiday and bad decisions by operators ended up causing an unfortunate and frustrating delay and frustration by many passengers. Second, I know you're not deliberately trying to mislead Canadians, because I know that the airlines and the airports did clearly say to you that my office had been in regular contact with airports and airlines on a daily basis. I was daily involved and briefed. By the way, the airlines or the airports were not confused about my instructions or my feeling about what was happening, about my expectations. It is not uncommon that it's typically, especially on a daily basis, it's done through my office or done through Transport Canada.
What else were you doing, Minister? What else were you doing?
I've been extremely involved and engaged on a regular basis. Airlines heard from us, maybe not even daily, maybe multiple times a day. So I can assure you. And the U.S., by the way, is set up differently than Canada. That the Department of Transportation in the U.S. is the one that is responsible for enforcing their protections, while in Canada, we set up the Canadian Transportation Agency to be at an arm's length. So there's why there's a difference there. Having said that, I was personally involved on a daily basis, in fact, on an hourly basis, on what was happening, and my instructions, my directions were clearly communicated regularly to airlines and airports.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you very much, Mr. Strahl. Prochainement, next we have Ms. Koutrakis. Ms. Koutrakis, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for accepting our invitation to appear before this committee once again in a short month after your last appearance here. Our colleagues on the Conservative side are suggesting that you should have used emergency authorities to order airlines to take certain actions. And I would argue and ask you, if I may, is it not a little rich for a party that talks about making the government smaller and less intrusive in getting gatekeepers out of the way to suggest that you micromanage the operations of private airlines?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Ms. Koutrakis, thank you for that question. I do think it is actually a a moment worth noting how a party that wants the government to typically says to get out of the way now is expecting more government involvement in the private sector, having almost to the degree of nationalizing our airlines. Having said that, my focus is on doing the right thing and upholding passenger rights. And I do believe that there is a role for government. I do believe there is a role for the Canadian Transportation Agency. So I will continue to do my job. I will continue to ensure that Canada, the government of Canada plays its role, and that the CTA has the tools that it needs to uphold its role as well.
Thank you. And I'm wondering if you can describe the actions that you and Transport Canada are contemplating to further strengthen passenger rights in Canada. I know you're saying that we're looking at that and we're going to be doing that. The government will be doing that. But where do you see specifically room for improvement?
Thank you, Ms. Katrakis. That's a great question. They revolve around three principles. The first one is clarification. It's clear that there's an issue of confusion about some of the rules. For example, Ms. Vinola brought up the point of safety, so we need to clarify the rules there. The second point is simplification. We need to make sure that the process of complaints, that the onus is more on the airline, so we need to simplify the process. Third, strengthening, which means are there additional rules that we can make? There is, again, a question about the fines. Should the fines be strengthened? So those are the three principles that we're looking about, and we're looking at international jurisdictions and see what lessons can be learned from them. But those are basically the ideas or the objectives that we're trying to achieve.
I'm also curious to know specifically what our committee here, the role that it can play to make sure that we are, when we're going through the consultation process, how can that consultation process reflect our recommendations? And do you have any suggested timelines that we should be considering while we're doing this work?
Thank you, Ms. Katrakis. As I stated earlier, I know that this committee held hearings in November about the Passenger Bill of Rights. We had a meeting. I was here on December 5th. At that time, I invited committee members to propose changes. I'm repeating that invitation. The input of this committee is going to be very useful for our government as we are proceeding with improving the Bill of Rights. And there will also be another opportunity once those proposals are tabled for the committee to provide further evidence and further feedback.
And at the risk of sounding repetitive again, I think that it merits and it begs for me to ask you the question once again. Our opposition colleagues are claiming that you weren't proactive in preempting the holiday season's transportation problems and that you only tweeted that these problems were unacceptable. We all know that that's not the case. As the parliamentary secretary to you, I know that that's not the case because I receive the same briefings as you do, and I know firsthand how active and proactive both you and your staff and Transport Canada has been throughout the whole process. So can you outline the measures you and Transport Canada took before and during the holidays to ensure that the travelers' rights were respected?
Thank you, Ms. Katrakis. And thank you. You are my parliamentary secretary and been playing an important role in this period. First of all, during the summer ordeal, I had the opportunity to speak with all airlines individually and visit many of the airports, large and small and regional, benefited from their experience and their insight. Then last November, we hosted a summit that brought the CEOs of airlines, of airports, of union representatives, and we talked about the necessary action needed moving forward. Then we also stood up, just before Christmas, a working group that involved airports, airlines, government agencies in preparation for the Christmas season to make sure that all the focus is placed on preparing for the Christmas rush. We all know that Christmas is one of the busiest times of the year. So we had done a lot of preparatory work. Unfortunately, the storm happened, causing extreme disruption. But we also ended up seeing unfortunate decisions made by an airline operator that caused many of the
Thank you very
frustrations we
much,
saw.
Minister, and thank you very much, Ms. Koutrakis. Next, we have, prochainement, nous avons Madame
Next, we have Ms. Vignola. Ms. Vignola, you have the floor. You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Some of my colleagues talked about the role of the CTA with all the thousands of complaints that are in a backlog. At your level, what would be possible to do to, and I do understand that it's an arm's length body, but what can you do to provide the office with all the tools to look into all of the complaints that they receive?
Thank you, Ms. Vignola, for that question. Yes, there are things that the federal government can do. And first, we need to identify how we can simplify the rules that govern in how the CTA deals with complaints. Are there opportunities to reduce red tape there to increase the efficiencies of handling the complaints? Second, we need to clarify the rules with the airlines and have the burden on the airlines to incentivize the airlines so they can resolve these matters before the complaints go to the CTA. Third, we need to provide, I'm working currently with the CTA and its chair on what additional resources they need so they are able to manage that load. Thank you.
Merci. Une petite...
Thank you. Another quick question. Are you considering a certain date by which you would like to introduce all of the changes that you have talked to us recently? Would it be before the spring holidays? Would it be before the summer holidays? Just to make sure that at peak times everything will be in order.
Look, my plan is to table those proposals during the spring session. There's still some work that is needed. The work is started before Christmas, but the plan that I'm aiming for is during the spring session. Yes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vignola.
The floor is yours. You have 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, you said one of the areas you're looking at is strengthening the fines that are possible under the Air Passenger Protection Regulations and the Canadian Transportation Act. But right now, there are fines of up to $25,000 per passenger that are possible under existing legislation. And yet, the only time we've seen the CTA issue airlines fines under the APPR, we saw fines of about $200 per passenger. Why didn't you use your ability under the Canadian Transportation Act to order the CTA to increase its fines and strengthen its enforcement to act as a deterrent? Like $200 isn't enough. I'm sure you'll agree with me on that.
Mr. Bacharach, you just acknowledged that the CTA has the authority to impose a fine up to $25,000 per passenger. The CTA has that authority. Please forgive me for avoiding to look like I am interfering into the independence of the CTA. My expectation is that the rules are enforced and that passengers' rights are upheld. I know that the CTA is coming here, so I'm sure that would be an interesting question for the CTA.
So, Minister, when you have companies worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, what is the purpose of a $200 fine per passenger? What's the goal of these administrative monetary penalties? Because it seems comical, frankly.
Mr. Bacharach, I'll repeat. We provided the CTA with authorities to impose significant fines. We leave the discretion to a quasi-judicial independent body to decide, based on the facts before them, what type of fines they impose. I think the CTA is capable of explaining how they come up with their decision. However, the government has provided authority to the CTA to impose significant fines. And as I just said, we are looking at whether there's an opportunity to increase those fines.
Will you commit to amending the legislation that APPR is built on, not simply changing the regulations themselves?
As we are in the process of examining how we strengthen the rules, if part of that strengthening the rules requires legislative changes, then yes, we will make the necessary legislative changes.
Will you commit to closing the loophole in the Canadian Transportation Act, Section 8611?
Mr. Bacharach, as I've been spending the hour here telling you, we're looking to strengthen the rules and learn from lessons of the past. And the commitment that I have to all of you is not only that I am pursuing those, but I'll take your input into consideration as we are examining what additional tools to introduce.
I'll be happy to provide it. My last question, when you spoke with Sunwing, did you encourage them to proactively pay customers the compensation they are due under the air passenger protection regulations instead of filing a complaint and standing in line for 18 months to get a ruling from the CTA?
Yes. In fact, the president of Sunwing Airline promised that that's what they're doing.
That they are going to
Thank you
proactively
very
award
much,
compensation?
Mr. Bacharach.
They are
Thank
going-
you, Minister. Appreciate it. Finally, we will have two last sessions of 3 minutes. We will begin. On commencera avec Monsieur Berthold. Monsieur
We will begin with Mr. Berthold. You have the floor. You have 3 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. My question for the Minister will be simple. Minister, where were you between the 23rd of December and the 5th of January? Because Canadians were sleeping on airport floors, stuck in airplanes in foreign countries with no news. You cannot simply say the situation was unacceptable, but you did not consider that it was severe enough for you, Mr. Minister, to intervene personally. You could have demonstrated leadership. You could have picked up the phone and called the airline companies, called the airports, and demonstrated leadership to make sure that Canadians, this is what Canadians expect of a minister. You did not even consider that this was a significant crisis, despite all the tweets you sent, to spend 2 hours to answer questions from members of the committee today. Minister, do you have the intention of following in Sunwing's steps and accept that you were at fault and explain to Canadians where you were between December 23rd and January 5th?
We're told, what do you want me to be responsible for, the weather or Sunwing's bad decisions? I've been personally involved even during Christmas Day, Boxing Day, on a regular basis, being informed and briefed on what's happening, providing direction. My office has been in touch with airlines and airports daily, sometimes more than once a day. Like you said, I've also issued public statements expressing my frustration of what was happening. I was personally involved on a daily basis, including during the Christmas holiday, of what was happening, and none of the airlines, including Sunwing, were clueless as to my feelings and my expectations as to what was happening.
If you think, Mr. Minister, that Sunwing failed, as you say, then why did you not call them between December 23rd and January 5th? Why did you not intervene personally? It's easy to send out tweets. You can do that from anywhere. You can have Zoom briefings from anywhere. Why did you not demonstrate leadership and directly go to the airport where this was all happening? Or why did you not directly call airline companies? And why did you not communicate with the airports? This is what we expect. This is what should be expected. This is what Canadians expect from their minister.
Mr. Bertoli, I think you're trying to confuse Canadians between what the role of my office and assuming that when my office calls that I am not personally involved. You heard today from the airlines and the airports that my office and Transport Canada officials were calling on my behalf on a daily basis, sometimes more than once a day. The airlines and the airports were very much aware of my input, my expectations. So we were, and I was personally involved daily, including on Christmas Day, including on Boxing Day, on what's happening. This is my responsibility, and we were putting pressure on the airline.
Thank you very much, Minister, et merci beaucoup, Monsieur Berthold.
Thank you very much, Mr. Berthold.
We have Ms. Demoff. Ms. Demoff, the floor is yours. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to change gears a little bit, Minister. VIA wasn't here today. I know they're coming to a future meeting, but you did mention the issues that they had in your opening remarks. I wanted to share with you an email I got from a constituent whose 83-year-old mother and her 82-year-old friend traveled from Chatham to Aldershot on December 23rd. Their train was 4 hours late getting in, but she said, given the weather conditions, we accepted this and we were thankful we arrived safely. However, when they returned home on December 27th, they were supposed to arrive at 9 p.m. Their train was 5.5 hours late, so these two 80-year-olds got into an unmanned VIA station at 2:20 a.m., and it was very difficult in a small town like Chatham or smaller town like Chatham to get a cab at 2:20 in the morning. I'm wondering, I recognize Via Rail as a separate entity and you're not in charge of it, Minister, but I would welcome your thoughts on Via Rail and their actions over the holidays and ongoing issues like this that this older woman and her friend encountered.
Thank you, Ms. Dema, for the question. There's two parts of my answer. First, what had happened during Christmas. First of all, let me say weather disruptions are Canadians are familiar with them, and they are patient when it comes to disruption. However, they rightly expect that they are kept informed and that alternative plans are prepared. What happened during Christmas, particularly the service between, I think, Ottawa and Toronto, where passengers were kept on the train without information for 19 hours, was totally unacceptable. And VIA accepted responsibility, and now they are conducting an independent review into what happened. Second, look, our government recognizes that Via Rail is essential for Canadians and that the current status quo needs improvement. As you know, Via does not own any of its track, and it sometimes is at the mercy of the owner of the tracks and ends up facing delays. That's why our government is investing in what previous governments have talked about in the past but never made reality, in a high-frequency rail where we are building a dedicated track for VIA to have a reliable, fast, clean service in the busiest corridor of the country. So I'm excited about that future, but in the meantime, VIA needs to accept its responsibility and learn from the lessons that happened during the Christmas holidays.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Ms. Demoff. And once again, on behalf of the committee, Minister, we want to thank you for appearing before us and providing us with your testimony and answering all of our questions. With that, I will suspend for 2 minutes and provide the time necessary to switch over to our next line of witnesses. We will suspend in 2 minutes. Back to order. With us for the second hour, we have from the Canadian Transportation Agency, Madame France Pigeot, Chair and Chief Executive Officer, as well as Mr. Tom Oman, Director General, Analyst and Outreach Branch. From the Department of Transport, we have with us once again Dominique Rochon, Acting Deputy Minister, Craig Hutton, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister Policy, Nicholas Robinson, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister Safety and Security, as well as Mr. Colin Stacey, Director General Air Policy. Thank you once again for joining us, and we'll turn it over to Madame Pigeot for her opening remarks. À vous la parole, vous avez 5 minutes.
You have the floor. You have 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the invitation to appear before you today. As you have noted, I'm accompanied today by Tom Oman, who's the Director General for Analysis and Outreach at the agency. The agency has a very significant mandate to protect different modes of transportation under federal jurisdiction. And we also have a mandate to protect the human rights of persons with disabilities to an accessible transportation network. The agency exercises its responsibilities through 2 distinct roles. First, the agency is a regulator that develops regulations in accordance with legislation and implements these. We also have the mandate as an administrative tribunal. We issue licenses rather and determinations, and we enforce regulations. Secondly, the agency is an administrative tribunal which resolves complaints using both formal and informal processes. A core component of our mandate is providing consumer protection for air passengers. The coming into force of the air passenger protection regulations in 2019 established for the first time minimum consumer protection requirements that all airlines are to follow. Many of these requirements are designed to attenuate the impact of disruptions in air passengers' travel journey. There are 3 categories as per the regulation under which the passengers will have certain rights. So flight disruptions could be categorized as being within airline control. Secondly, within airline control but required for safety. Or a third category would be outside airline control. Since the coming into force of the regulation in 2019, passengers have indeed availed themselves of the regulations to take advantage of the new obligations on airlines. The regulation came into effect just before the pandemic, which, as you know, had significant impacts on the transport industry, and they have had challenges in recovering operationally. The result has been a record number of complaints submitted to the agency. To put this in perspective, in the year before the APPR came into force in 2018-2019, the agency received about 7,600 complaints. In the year that the APPR came into force, that is in 2019-2020, we received just over 19,000 complaints. And in the current year, since April 1st, 2022, the agency has received almost 21,000 complaints. We have streamlined our processes and achieved new efficiencies. Unfortunately, we are still faced with a backlog of about 33,000 complaints.
True that our experience has been that about 97% of our complaints are resolved informally through a facilitation process, which takes an average of 20 business days to close once an agency facilitator begins the process. With respect to the recent holiday flight disruptions, we do expect that a significant number of complaints will be filed with the agency. Typically, these complaints are usually filed a month or so after the flight disruptions in question, as passengers must first make their claim directly with the airline, which has 30 days to respond. These flight disruptions began with winter storms that first impacted flights out of Western Canada, particularly Vancouver, and later on impacted Ontario and Quebec-based flights. We were very quickly on the ground. Our enforcement officers were there, and communicating with airlines, monitoring the situation, gathering the necessary information, and they are currently investigating potential violations of regulatory requirements, and the work is ongoing. Over the same holiday period, for example, as what other things we have done, agency staff has communicated with Sunwing regarding its cancellation of all flights to and from Saskatchewan until February 3rd. And at that time, we were told that compensation to all passengers requesting, if they were informed less than 2 weeks in advance of their canceled flight, that they would get compensation as is required under the APPR, which is the Air Passengers Protection Regulation. We will continue to monitor the response of airlines to the holiday flight disruptions, and we will also respond to incoming complaints arising out of these flight disruptions. In order to help passengers who have filed complaints with the agency, we have recently added a new application to our website, which we call the Case Status Update, which allows every complainant to know where they stand in the queue and what the next steps are in resolving their dispute with the airline. Furthermore, we have posted consumer-friendly guides that can be easily read and navigated on a smartphone, as well as providing information on what passengers are entitled to and how to file a complaint to make it easy to follow the process, and particularly when they're at the airport when the event happens. We're also working on addressing the complaint backlog by further increasing our complaint processing capacity through identifying and implementing procedural improvements, modernizing our process, and we hope to eventually be able to automate some part of our process. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and would be happy to respond to any question.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peugeot.
Line of questioning today, we have Dr. Lewis. Dr. Lewis, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes. Dr. Lewis, unfortunately, you are on mute. Just want to make sure. Can we just test?
Thank you.
I think we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. I just want to thank everyone, all of the witnesses, for their testimony here today. And my question is for Mr. Rochon. Canadians have experienced one of the worst travel seasons in its history, and Canadian airports have sunk to the bottom of the world's airports in terms of reputation. And surely you saw the luggage piles all over the Pearson Airport. And we heard from the minister, and it's not that it's natural that we're going to have weather disruptions. But he also acknowledged that Canadians can also expect that we will have information and updates. The chaos at Pearson lasted until the 26th, 48 hours, until the 26th. But the deputy minister, you didn't contact the airport's executives until the 29th, and that was 3 days after the crisis was cleared up. Wouldn't you agree that Canadians deserve their government to show up during a crisis and deserve to have information during that crisis?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. And absolutely, I would agree that throughout the course of the crisis, we should be keeping Canadians apprised. And the royal we there would be everyone involved throughout the air sector environment. Now, what I will point out, and as the minister had highlighted, Transport Canada officials coming out of the air sector summit that the minister held in November 24th, if memory serves me right. Following that, our policy officials got together, formed something that we refer to as the AROC, the Airport Recovery Operations Committee. That committee is formed of the four largest airports, a couple of the largest air carriers, as well as CBSA, NAV Canada, and CATSA. And our officials got together with them on a regular basis leading into the holiday period. I believe the last meeting of that committee was on the 20th. The purpose of that committee was to ensure...
We heard evidence from Sunwing, which stated that they were trying to reach out to you on December the 28th, and that they did not have a response from the minister until January the 5th is when they had that virtual meeting with the minister. Now, I know that you had communicated with them on the 29th, but they had to wait for over a week to hear back from the minister. And why was it that you were able to communicate on the 29th and the minister was not?
Well, I'm not going to speak for the minister because I think he did a good job of doing that for himself in the hour that preceded us. What I can say is that Transport Canada officials were in touch with Sunwing on a daily basis. I know for a fact because the Deputy Minister, Mike Keenan, and I were interacting with our officials, and we were getting updates at times, as the minister pointed out, on an hourly basis, leading into Christmas Day and indeed on Boxing Day, the 27th, et cetera.
So then somebody's giving misinformation then, because Sunwing gave evidence that they had reached out to your office on the 28th, and now you're saying that the executives are not giving the correct information. Could your office be potentially misinterpreting what happened?
No, in the sense that we were interacting with Sunwing officials. When I say we, the Department of Transport and our officials were in touch with Sunwing to get periodic updates in terms of what was happening with regard to their flights and what was happening in terms of their obligations to passengers. And that was happening. I have emails exchanges from my officials and indeed
so when
hearing
you say
from the
we,
president.
you don't mean you or the minister? When you say
Correct.
we, you're not talking about you or the minister?
I'm talking about the department.
The department, okay. So they are accurate in saying that they didn't hear from you or the minister at that time and during the period that they stipulated today?
Correct. I would have to get back to you specifically. I personally did not speak with a senior official at Sunwing, but our Deputy Minister, Mike Keenan, did have an interaction, and I believe that's probably the reference to the 28th that you are referring to.
And don't you think that it would have been important when you see all of that luggage all over the place at the airport, that instead of sending out a tweet, that it would have been important to make that connection, to give Canadians some assurance that the government that they elected to take care of them is actually on the crisis and doesn't show up when the crisis is over?
What I would say is that we were interacting with airport authorities. We were interacting with air carriers. We were interacting with Via Rail. So there was interaction happening to understand exactly the extent of the issues, and we were seeking assurances from all of the various different players what they were doing to rectify the situation. Of course, at the
And
same
then, so
time,
after
we
you
were in the
gained
middle
that
of 3
understanding-
massive storms that were happening. So it's not as though this was a calm period. We're going through, and of course, we're also dealing with all of these issues at a time where many of our officials were going through Christmas holidays as well. So
Right. But they do have devices on them. They do have cell phones.
Unfortunately, Dr. Lewis, there's no more time left in your slot. Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Chahal. Mr. Chahal, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for officials for joining us and providing some testimony today. I'm just going to start off with the Canadian Transportation Agency. Madame Pigeot, are you able to, we've had 33,000 claims, and do we have a breakdown of those claims and which industry members they're attributed to?
We actually have just put on our website the number of complaints per 100 flights that we have received per airline. So I would be happy to send you this information after the meeting. I should point out, though, that these are the complaints we receive, which doesn't necessarily mean that those complaints have merit and would lead to necessary compensation, but it gives an idea about the number of complaints we receive per
Okay,
company.
so you do have a breakdown of the airlines, of each individual airline. Do you have information of how many of those complaints are resolved by the airlines prior they come to you? What percentage?
We do not have access to that data.
So is that a challenge on the airlines not providing it, or that you cannot, they cannot provide it to you, or that you are not able to get it from them?
There's no regulatory requirements for them to provide us that information.
Okay. So how many cases were resolved prior to this last year? If we go, I know the APPR was brought forward in 2019. You had a number of cases come forward. How many were brought forward to the CTA that you reviewed that resulted in compensation or further penalties? So the passengers got compensation because they were right to go through this process. They won. But that you assessed further fines or penalties on the airlines or other industry members.
Okay. So I could give you a breakdown of the number of complaints we have received over the years. 97% of those complaints are resolved informally through our facilitation services. And in that case, we do not know necessarily the outset of and how those complaints are resolved, because sometimes they would be resolved, between the industry and the consumers. And sometimes, of course, we play a facilitated role, but we do not keep track on that. What we do have is the 3% would be for adjudication. So these go through the tribunal, the administrative tribunal, and are decided by the members of the tribunal. And so these we could get this information for you.
Okay, so you don't have that information on hand, but you could provide it to the committee?
We could probably, we could provide it to the committee.
Okay. Why is the CTA not issuing further penalties or fine to industry members if they are non-compliant? Or have they?
Yeah.
And if so, can you provide examples of that?
For sure. Well, we have actually given fines. I would start by saying that we have many tools to achieve compliance with the regulations. And at the core of the system that we have is actually a system that provides remedies for passengers when they encounter problems during their travel journey, which is why we actually favor the resolution of complaints, because in those cases, consumers get some form of compensation. When we provide some, administrative monetary penalty, this does not go to the consumers or to the passengers. That being said, we have, 6 and soon 7 enforcement officers who are very active in monitoring what's going on in the industry. and we have given administrative monetary penalties for more than $185,000 and almost $100,000 until the beginning of this fiscal year. And as I've mentioned a little earlier, with respect to what has happened over the holiday, they are monitoring, they are gathering data, and some investigations are going on.
I don't have much time. 2 questions. Do you have enough authority? In which areas of the APPR do you believe we should strengthen to protect passengers?
I will go straight to your answer then, because you don't have a lot of time. But I think that based on our experience, one area that could be beneficial is to really clarify what we call the categorization of flights. The fact that we have 3 categories of flights where the airline is responsible for the issue, is responsible, but it has happened because of safety, or is not responsible. And the fact that we have, like I would say, gray areas that are like that big, if we could reduce it a little bit more and have more clarity there, that would certainly help.
Thank you. If you have any other information you could provide as discussed, that would be greatly appreciated to the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chahal. Merci beaucoup, Madame Peugeot.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peugeot. Next up, we have Ms. Vignola. You have the floor. You have 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. My questions will be for Ms. Peugeot. Hello. Thank you for appearing before us. And gentlemen, thanks for staying. On December 20, 2022, we were talking about 30,000 complaints from citizens in a backlog, and you were saying that 87% of the complaints are dealt with informally. Would it be right to say that the annual budget of your department is about $44 million? That's the base budget. Just a second, I have my numbers. So our base budget is about $34 million, and we received $11.5 million for a year, which will end in March. So the current delays, are these because of financial resources that are missing, human resources that are missing, or a need in terms of planification or organization that is not being met, or is it the regulation itself that is creating this explosion in the number of complaints, but are you also having to deal with longer processes on your end? So what is the reason of this backlog, and how can we resolve it? You talked about automation, but there might be other solutions. Well, in answering a previous question, I mentioned that maybe we need a bit more clarity between different flight categories, because it's the flight category that will determine the compensation that a passenger can obtain. This information is in the hands of the airline companies. If the passenger is not happy with the answer, they will have to contact the CTA to get an answer and eventually maybe a compensation or not. That explains some of the complaints. We introduced a program to improve our efficiency, and I am actually very proud of the work done by our colleagues. We have the formal procedure that comes before the members of the tribunal. Once the case reaches the tribunal, it takes 69 days to resolve it. Last year it was 102 days, and the year before it was 117. So we're constantly improving our timelines. This year we will also be able to do 2,500 more complaints compared to last year with essentially the same resources. So you heard from the minister that we are working with him to look into what kinds of additional resources we might need. The agency, as per its mandate, is supposed to take pay attention to the regulation as well, right? We are responsible for developing a regulation in line with the bill adopted by Parliament. So you met with representatives of airlines and different lobby groups, right? Well, we have two roles. One is the tribunal role, and there we have the duties of a superior court. We are trying to settle the disputes between different parties, and this is where we are very strict. We do not have direct contact between the different parties. But as an agent of regulation, as with any other agent of regulation, from time to time we come into contact with companies to solve certain challenges, but that is really within that specific framework. Recently, we published on our website a declaration about our independence, where we explain how we make sure that we uphold this independence, all the while preserving our capacity of playing an effective regulation agent role. Did you also meet representatives of consumers, organizations, advocacy groups with... Yes, of course. I think at least twice I met with representatives of passenger advocacy groups. We met with representatives of PIAG, Public Interest Advocacy Group. So at least twice a year that is done. And I've also met with people representing people with disabilities, given that we have a role in the accessibility of transportation. Well, last quick question. Our legislation compared to Europe contains 3 different categories. Companies can say, well, it's actually our fault, but it's also a security issue. So can we get rid of this loophole, if I can put it that way, this aspect of the regulation, which seems to be a bit of a problem when it comes to complaints and compensation, because they tell us it's a security issue. We wish to believe them, but we also need additional details. So is this a sort of a loophole? Of course, security is important. That is clear for everyone, very, very clear for everyone. But should we simplify maybe the regulation and just eliminate this section or modifying it? It is clear that we need more clarity about what the passengers are entitled to. There is a lot of variation. There's a grid that you need to use. If it could be simplified, it would help the passengers, would help the industry as well, and it would help us, especially when it comes to implementing the regulation, but also for the tribunal side of our activities. Thank you, Thank you very much, Ms. Peugeot. Ms. Vignola.
First, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to begin with some questions for Ms. Peugeot. Thank you for being here. You mentioned the need to clarify the flight categories, which are listed in Section 8611 of the Canadian Transportation Act. Now, Canada, as you mentioned, has 3 categories. And it seems like a lot of the behavior that we're seeing from the airlines stems from the fact that there's this loophole in 8611 that allows airlines to construe almost every issue resulting in delays or cancellations as a safety issue. And we're talking about flying aircraft through the air with hundreds of people on them, so lots of things are related to safety. But the European Union takes a very different tack. In the European Union, there are only 2 categories. There's a category for ordinary disruptions. So these are disruptions that could have been avoided by reasonable action on the part of the airline. Things like making sure you have enough crew, making sure you have enough aircraft, making sure those aircraft are properly maintained. And then the other category is extraordinary circumstances, things like terrorism, things like manufacturing defects that are identified by the manufacturer of the plane. Why did Canada, maybe that's not the question for the CTA because it goes back to the origin of the regulations, but do you feel that it would be productive for us to move towards a more simplified 2-category system like the EU uses? And the EU is held up as having the gold standard when it comes to air passenger regulation. So I'll pose that question to you and then perhaps to the folks from Transport Canada.
So this is not in the regulations. Those three categories are actually in the
That's right.
legislation.
In the Canadian
right?
Transportation Act, yes.
Yeah,
Sorry
exactly.
if I misspoke.
And I think the minister, mentioned before in the session before that he was looking at clarity. And I think that, as I've just mentioned, I think that having more clarity around those categories would certainly help. I'd like to maybe point out too that we've issued the tribunal issued two decisions this summer. With respect to actually areas around safety, because in some cases the companies were arguing that they could not, because of the crew shortage, it caused some safety issues. And actually, what the tribunal, the agency said in that context was that actually the safety rule, could not, if the result of the safety issue was the responsibility or the action, or was because of the action or the inaction of the company, it could not use this excuse, not to compensate passengers. And we've also, the agency has also put the bar fairly high, I would argue, to use safety as an excuse not to compensate. So in those two cases, as you may know, one has been challenged before the court by one of the company. The other company actually challenged as well and appealed our decision. But in the second case, the court did not accept the appeal.
So my understanding, just to follow up, is that in the case that was allowed leave to appeal, the judge said, yes, there's a lack of clarity. It seems like there's a lack of clarity. I can understand that reading of the legislation. Does that not point to the need to close that loophole and move towards a simplified categorization?
I would not want to speak to the judge, because at the end, I think the judge will have to decide based on what will be in front of him or in front of her. What he said is like, it was prepared, he or she was, I don't remember, was prepared to go for the appeal. Yeah. So I'm not ready to qualify this as a loophole. I think what I think is bringing more clarity, as the minister indicated as well, I think would certainly be beneficial.
I'm going to shift on to a different topic,
sure.
And I'd like to ask the folks from Transport Canada about administrative monetary penalties, and perhaps start by asking a broader question, which is, what is the purpose of these administrative monetary penalties? What's the policy objective?
Do you want me to answer that? Maybe I should answer that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, the
Chair,
penalties
if you don't mind, because
they exist in the legislation. That's why I thought it might be.
The objective of those penalties is to achieve compliance, right? And we have many tools to achieve compliance. A key one is actually doing processing complaints, which actually gives compensation to the consumers or to the passengers, and that's why at the core of our regime is remedial regime to provide that compensation to the passengers to counteract a little bit some of the problems they would have had. And when we provide administrative monetary penalties, it's another tool to achieve compliance.
So when you fined WestJet recently, I believe there were 53 infractions, 55 separate violations. The amount that you fined them amounted to $200 per passenger affected. Now, the cost of them providing the compensation under the APPR was between $400 and $1,000. So you can see why, as a company that is looking to maximize profits and minimize costs, there's an incentive here to skirt the rules, because, first of all, you don't get caught very often. A very small fraction of passengers ever file a complaint with the CTA. And then when you finally do get busted and the CTA slaps your wrist, it only costs you $200 per passenger. That seems like a screaming deal. Can you see the point?
Well, let me explain to you why what we have done. So, first of all, those administrative monetary penalties were not provided because there was no compensations. Those monetary penalties were given because the company did not respond within 30 days to the complaints. So this, so that's the first point I'd like to make. The other is, according to administrative law, when you have a system with administrative monetary penalties, if you allow me, I will say AMP, okay? Because it's so providing AMPs, you have to have a gradual or incremental approach, so that the next time that we would, basically we would have a company like WestJet or others, because we have actually given AMP to Air Canada, to Flair, for the same, offense, we would therefore double the penalty and, continue like that. And that's essentially what a principle of administrative law forces.
Malheureusement, Madame Peugeot,
Unfortunately, Ms. Peugeot, I will have to intervene.
next round. Next, prochainement, we have Ms. Landsman. Ms. Landsman, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thanks everybody for being here and accepting the invitation to appear before committee. Madame Peugeot, I want to bring something to your attention. In the last hour, we heard the minister say, quote, Sunwing violated passenger rights. So that's new information, and it's rather at odds with what he said about the impartiality of the CTA. But besides that, do you believe that to be true? And if so, is there a way to expedite the compensation for Canadians who were stranded this holiday season on their travel plans related to Sunwing? Because I'm sure we can clear up a lot of that backlog if the minister is saying loud and clear in committee that Sunwing violated passenger rights.
Okay, I may have missed that quote from the minister. So we have actually from the outset when the situation started at the end of December, we had our enforcement officers were on the ground and were actively monitoring the situation, were gathering information, and have now launched some investigation. So I can assure you that if the regulations were not complied to, we will take action.
Well, the problem, I think, and why we're here at committee is that Canadians feel sort of left behind. There's a backlog that they're hearing about of 33,000 cases. Many of them, taking 18 months to get compensation. These are people who saved up all of their money to take a family trip, to finally go away for Christmas, to finally reunite with their family. So you can understand the frustration in trying to clear this backlog. I just want to jump over to the air transportation, the Canada Transportation Act, the legislation that we're talking about. There's a section in there which says that the minister can issue policy directions to the CTA, and that again goes counter to impartiality. But it's within the legislation that he can provide policy direction. So I just want to know if you've had any policy direction from the government with respect to tightening enforcement on passenger rights, which we've talked about, which may come later, but he has that ability now. Have you gotten any policy direction with respect to enhanced enforcement on notices of violation or any meaningful administrative monetary policy, to which my colleague just asked the reason? And I think the reason that he asked what that was all about is because $200 doesn't seem like a monetary penalty that's going to make a dent into these big airlines. So I just want to know if you got any policy direction.
Let me first say that I am certainly not happy to have 30,000 complaints. Then this is something that we have been in the backlog, and that's something we've been working really diligently to improve our processes and to make sure that actually we use as best as possible the budget that we have been given. And I know that this year, for example, we'll be able to deal with 2,500 more complaints than we have last year. The minister we have received some directions from the minister or from previous ministers. For example, this is on the direction of the minister that we have developed a new regulation on refund, which is a gap that was identified during COVID, where there was no provision in the regulation to provide refund to consumers when the incident was outside the control of the companies, and we have resolved that gap, which resulted in a new regulation that came into force in September.
Now, I'm talking specifically about enhanced enforcement of our passenger rights regulations. I'm talking specifically on notice of violations when it comes to the conduct of these operators, and then specifically about monetary policies, because I think Canadians would agree that whatever is happening in passenger rights protections, which is why we are all here, is not enough.
So this actually falls under the responsibility of the agency and therefore under mine. We have, during the holiday, we have our 6 and soon 7 enforcement officers have been underground and have been monitoring the situation, have been gathering information, and have launched investigation. And if we notice that, that there were some contravention to the legislation and regulations, we will take action.
I've just one more question for the CTA. Given this talk of impartiality, even though the board of the CTA is appointed by the government, how do you communicate with the Department of Transport? Is it by encrypted email?
No, actually. So there's two roles that we have. One is as an administrative tribunal, and there is with respect to the decisions that are made by the tribunal, there is a very thick wall, I would say, and there is absolutely no discussion there at all. With respect to enforcement, neither. This is our responsibility, and we're responsible for that. Of course, when we develop a regulation, when we face situation that affects responsibilities, I think it's our duty actually to coordinate with colleagues from other organizations or to speak to them and understand what they're doing, and we would be openly meeting with the Department of Transport. This doesn't affect at all our independence. Which is why we developed an independent statement, which we have put on our website, that explains the difference of roles and explain how we behave, in the different roles.
Thank you very much, Ms. Landsman and Madame Pigeot. Malheureusement, encore une fois.
Unfortunately, once again, I need to intervene. We're out of our time.
Where's yours? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all our officials for being here this afternoon and for your very valuable testimony. And I also wanted to take the opportunity, because I'm sure you don't often hear this, but I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much to you and your teams for all the hard work that you do. I know this isn't easy. A lot of very difficult questions today being addressed to you, but I have full confidence in your ability to see us through this difficult time. So thank you for doing what you do. Earlier, when the minister was here, and this question is to Transport Canada officials, I don't know who could take it, but my colleague MP Landsman suggested the minister use authorities he has under subsection 49(1) of the Act to order the CTA to conduct an inquiry into what happened during the holidays. However, if he opted for this, while the agency would be required to conduct an inquiry and make public a summary of its findings, of course, without any confidential information, such an inquiry would be analytical in nature and would not result in any corrective action. It would also consume agency resources that might otherwise be applied to addressing the backlog in complaints, which you spoke about, Ms. Pigeot. This would not necessarily be the best use of its limited resources, would it? Especially if we are already started to get a good picture of what happened and why it happened.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. And with respect to conducting an investigation, you're quite right. Just in terms of looking at the details of what happened over the course of the holidays, that is something that the agency is empowered to do in terms of complaints that are brought before it. It can look at those individual cases and make those determinations as those complaints come forward as to what the individual circumstances were and make rulings based on what they have before them. So they have that power now, and many Canadians and passengers may choose to avail themselves of that opportunity if they haven't already in the coming days, if they're not seeking redress directly with air providers in the air sector system. With respect to the use of resources, I'll leave that to the agency to kind of talk a little bit about how sort of they organize themselves to manage those complaints that come to them. But you're quite right in terms of any broad investigation that the minister may ask, or have a broad inquiry that the minister may ask of the agency. That wouldn't deal with any specific instance faced by a passenger, but rather the broad issues around the events over the holiday holiday period and wouldn't necessarily come to any particular recommendations on that. But that having been said, I think the minister was quite clear that whether it's the results from the study from this committee or other venues that he has hosted and conversations that he's had, and of course interaction that officials have had with transportation providers, we are looking very closely at improvements that can be made as a result of the disruptions we saw, not only over the holiday period, but of course the congestion that we saw over the course of last spring and summer. So all of these things we are looking at very closely for improvements that can be made, not only to the APPRs and the passenger rights regime, but of course more broadly in terms of how the sector responds and conducts its operations.
And staying with Transport Canada, I wanted to pivot a question to VIA. Can you comment on the restoration of VIA service and what actions were taken?
I'm going to jump in just, if I may, to correct something that the minister may have said in the last session. I just wanted to get it on the record. He mentioned that VIA didn't own any of the tracks that they use. In fact, they do own less than 5%, but I just wanted to add that little correction. He rightfully said, though, that there are challenges there. Now we have started to invest, we started to provide resources, and I don't know whether, Nick, you want to maybe take that question from a rail safety perspective?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as the deputy just mentioned, the restorations of service was made more difficult because CN was responsible to repair the track that was impacted by a derailment by CN. We focus on the train that had been struck by a tree, but the reason why service was delayed and canceled on the 25th and 26th was that there was a derailment as well along that same corridor. It was in a very difficult part of the corridor that was in a culvert, so it was very difficult for workers to get to, and it took quite a while. Both tracks were impacted. It took quite a while. It took 2 days, over close to 3 days to restore service. So what we did in Transport Canada, and part of the continuation of keeping abreast and working to address the challenges over the storm period, is we worked with the CN and VIA right from the beginning of the derailment that happened on the 24th, but also the train that was stranded on the 23rd. Made sure that there was a rescue operation, another train that came in to offload the passengers that were stranded on the tracks. Unfortunately, due to weather and track conditions, that did take far too long, and we understand that, and we'll work with VIA on that. We also are undertaking our own.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut you off there, and thank you very much, Ms. Koutrakis. Prochainement, nous avons encore
Next up, we will have once again Ms. Vignola. You have the floor. You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have so many questions, but I will continue with Mr. Rochon. Mr. Rochon, during the pandemic, airlines received hundreds of millions of dollars in support of different kinds to keep the expertise of their employees and to be able to pay the overheads. And I've been contacted by some, not in person, via the internet, of course, these days, but they told me, well, it's almost like a double punishment because we were ready to help these companies out from our tax money, and that was right. We had to save them because these were our companies, our local companies, but these airlines, these companies, are not diligent when it comes to compensating us for the troubles we've had with their service. So I don't know how to answer when people tell me this, but what would you tell citizens in a similar situation? Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, the situations we've had over the recent period are quite extraordinary. We had the pandemic. Following the pandemic, there was a change of about 300% when it comes to the number of passengers, which all of a sudden became a factor, which of course added to the difficulties, to the challenges. And then there was a very unique situation whereby different storm systems hit us during Christmas, during the holidays. I think the only thing that can be said, as the Canadian government, we're fully aware. We're doing our best in terms of bringing all the players within the ecosystem together to rectify and repair and get rid of the situations or the difficulties that we've had. I think we have been able to make progress when it comes to what happened this summer. And once again, there is progress that needs to be made. And when it comes to the regulation that offers protection to air passengers, there's still more work to be done. To introduce a bit more balance, a bit more appropriate balance going forward. So with the expert support from this committee and the conversations that we have and we will have, I hope that we'll be able to do that. Thank you, Mr. Rochon. Thanks, Ms. Vignola.
The floor is yours. You have 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try to fit in 2 questions, so please bear with me. Ms. Peugeot, you clarified that the fines issued to WestJet were not for failure to provide compensation. Has the CTA ever levied fines against an airline for failing to provide compensation under APPR?
No.
Why not?
Because what we have done, we have proceeded with that, and what we have. As I said, the first thing that we do, first of all, is we really focus on focusing on complaints, because this is what puts money in the pockets of the consumers. So the first line of action for the CTA is really around that. The other thing is this is a relatively new regime, right? So we have started to do complaints that are under APPR like not that long ago. And in some cases, we have, tried, but at the same time, too, we need complaints for that. And in some cases, the companies, have resolved informally the complaints with the passengers.
I find that quite alarming that no fines, despite all of the 33,000 complaints, that there have been no fines for failure to provide compensation. But I'm going to move on to the officials from Transport Canada. And I'd like to speak to a slightly different issue. We've been focused on the situations faced by air passengers. Of course, on board those aircraft are also flight attendants who are in many cases stuck in the same situations that the passengers are and are tasked with the very difficult job of managing hundreds of passengers under stressful, trying circumstances. So first of all, I want to thank them for the hard work that they do. And secondly, I want to raise some of their concerns that have come to light. First of all, I wasn't aware that flight attendants aren't paid unless they're actually on a flight. And the recent disruptions have increased dramatically the amount of time that flight attendants aren't on board a flight and has affected their overall pay. And secondly, that the kind of duty time regulations that apply to pilots are not extended to flight attendants working in the back of the plane, despite the fact that their roles are critical to the safety of the passengers on board that aircraft. Is the department aware of these concerns, and is it working on policy to address them?
A very short answer, please.
I'll start with the issue on payment and how that applies. These would be included in collective agreements. I don't think it's something we could particularly comment on. It's an arrangement between the employer and the employee.
And I'll speak to the flight and duty time regulations. That is an issue that has been raised by flight attendants. We are looking at the issue. As you know, the flight and duty times for air crews have just come in. We're implementing those, but it's something that we look either through their safety management system or if there's a need for standalone regulations to address.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson, and thank you, Mr. Bachrach. And finally, for today, we will go to Ms. Landsman, who we will give 3 minutes to ensure that we finish somewhat on time. Ms. Landsman, the floor is yours. You have 3 minutes.
Thanks. Madam Pigeot, I just wanted to come back on a question that I started, and it's my understanding that the CTA and Transport Canada regularly exchange encrypted emails. And it's my understanding that some of these emails have been deleted. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to maybe you misspoke in saying that that's not the case, but an affidavit that the CTA filed in federal court suggests the opposite. So I want to know, for every Canadian watching, for every Canadian that has a complaint with filed with the CTA, for all of those that were left sleeping on airport floors and shuffled from hotel lobby to hotel lobby in a foreign country, I want to know how you ensure transparency and independence if the public cannot scrutinize any of the emails through access to information or any of the tools that we as an opposition have at hand. I want to know how it's possible that you would serve the Canadian public who are looking for answers, and I'm not sure have found any in the hour of this committee. How do you ensure that they get the information that they need through the channels if you're using encrypted email to speak to the Government of Canada about cases?
Like any citizen can, have access through access to information, have access to the different documents that we work on. Actually, we do speak with, Transport Canada. We exchange emails. We have meetings. I just want to reassure Mr. Chair, the committee, that when it comes to the complaints, there is a clear wall between the agency and Transport Canada, and that the members of the committee who makes the members of the agency that makes decisions on complaints are actually totally independent. Actually, I have no authority myself over the members. They have been appointed by governor based on good behaviors, so they cannot be, fired if the government does not like the decisions that they make. Contrary to, other government and council appointments that are appointed, we call at pleasure. So there is absolutely independence, and I invite you to consult our website, the independence statement that, provides a lot of details on how we ensure our independence.
Thank you very much, Ms. Landsman. I'll take this opportunity to thank once again all of our witnesses for appearing today. I'd also like to thank our members for answering questions on behalf of Canadians, all of the translators, the analysts, and the clerks for making today happen. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.